In a universe where fate made a single mistake, reality tore open above the pride ring of hell, and something that didn't belong came crashing through fire and brimstone. The sky split like wounded flesh. Crimson lightning carved through the perpetual dusk that hung over hell's most populated district, and sinners scattered as something fell from the impossible tier in space. Not an angel, not a demon, something else entirely. Garou hit the ground with enough force to crater the street. Concrete exploded outward in a perfect circle. Buildings shook, car alarms wailed, and for the first time in centuries, the sinners of hell's pride ring went silent because the thing rising from the impact crater didn't look like it belonged to any realm they knew. He stood slowly, white hair wild and blood-matted, his body covered in black and crimson markings that seemed to pulse with their own terrible life. His eyes, gold and predatory, scanned the hellscape around him with the detached interest of an apex predator suddenly dropped into unfamiliar hunting grounds. Garou didn't know where he was. The last thing he remembered was God's overwhelming power bearing down on him, reality itself rejecting his existence as the ultimate monster. Saitama had shattered his absolute form. The hero hunter had fallen, but he shouldn't have fallen here. This wasn't Earth. The sky was wrong, too red, too eternal. The air tasted of sulfur and old pain, and the creatures staring at him from broken windows and alley shadows weren't human, despite wearing human shapes. One sinner, braver or stupider than the rest, approached. He was a rat-faced demon with 3 eyes and knife fingers. "Fresh meat," he hissed, lunging forward with the confidence of something that had killed 1,000 times in this deathless realm. Garou's hand moved, the rat demon's head separated from his body before the shock could register in his triple-eyed face. The corpse dissolved into ash and screaming light, pulled somewhere deeper into hell's infrastructure. The other sinners retreated further. Garou looked at his hands, turning them over slowly. Whatever had happened, whatever cosmic mistake had dragged him from Earth to this place, he was still himself, still the monster, still capable of the hunt. "Well, well, well," the voice came from above, dripping with theatrical amusement. "What have we here? A new arrival who didn't use the front door." Garou's eyes snapped upward. Standing on a fire escape, backlit by hell's red sky, was a figure in a red suit. Tall, impossibly thin, with a smile that stretched too wide and eyes that held the patient cruelty of something ancient. The radio demon, though Garou didn't know that name yet. Alistair tilted his head, studying the blood-soaked fighter with the interest a scientist might show a new specimen. "You're not dead, not properly anyway. How fascinating. You have a heartbeat, a living heartbeat in the land of the damned." Garou said nothing. He'd learned long ago that speaking too soon revealed weaknesses. "Strong, silent type, how refreshing." Alistair's grin somehow widened. "Though I'm afraid you've landed in rather inhospitable territory. The Pride Ring isn't kind to newcomers, especially those who aren't supposed to be here." He gestured broadly at the devastated street. "You've already made quite the impression." Before Garou could respond, a new sound cut through the air. Music, cheerful, determined music that had no business existing in hell. A van careened around the corner, rainbow-colored and absurdly optimistic. It screeched to a halt at the edge of Garou's impact crater. The door burst open, and out stepped something that made Garou's predator instincts scream confusion. A young woman demon, he corrected himself, noting the horns and tail, with blonde hair and eyes that shone with impossible hope. She wore a red suit and radiated the kind of earnest enthusiasm that Garou had spent his entire life despising in heroes. "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" Charlie Morningstar rushed forward, completely ignoring the danger radiating from the blood-covered fighter. "That looked like a really bad fall. Do you need help? Are you hurt?" Garou stared at her. In his world, no hero had ever asked if the monster was hurt. "Princess," Alistair called from his perch, tone amused. "I don't think this one needs your particular brand of assistance." "Everyone needs help, Alistair." Charlie turned her attention back to Garou, extending a hand. "I'm Charlie. I run the Hazbin Hotel. It's a place for redemption and..." "Redemption?" Garou's voice came out harsh, unused. He looked at her hand like it was a weapon. "You think sinners can be redeemed?" "I don't think I know." Charlie's smile didn't waver despite the coldness in his tone. "Everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone has good in them, they just need help finding it." Garou laughed. It was a terrible sound, empty of humor. "I hunted heroes, good people, people who saved lives, I near." Lie destroyed my world, becoming the ultimate monster because I believed heroes were frauds and the strong preying on the weak was absolute evil. He took a step toward her, and to her credit, Charlie didn't retreat. If there was good in me, I buried it deep enough that God himself tried to erase my existence. So tell me, Princess of Hell, what makes you think redemption means anything? The street had gone silent again. Even Alistair's smile had shifted into something more calculating. Charlie met his eyes, and in hers he saw something he hadn't expected. Recognition, not of him, but of the pain that shaped him. Because I think you're asking the question. Monsters don't ask about redemption, people do. Something in Garou's chest twisted. He turned away from her, from that unbearable hope, and began walking down the ruined street. Stay away from me, I'm not one of your projects. The Hazbin Hotel is at the edge of the district, Charlie called after him. If you change your mind, the door's always open. Garou didn't look back, but her words followed him into hell's twisted streets like a hook he couldn't shake. Behind him, Alistair descended from his perch, joining Charlie as they watched the monster disappear into the chaos. That one's dangerous, my dear, more dangerous than any sinner you've tried to rehabilitate. Maybe, Charlie said softly, but I've never seen anyone look so lost. And in the shadows between buildings, in the depths of hell's pride ring, Garou walked alone, a living human in a realm of the dead, a monster seeking purpose in a place built for punishment, wondering if cosmic fate had made a mistake or if this was exactly where he belonged. The hunt was about to begin, but in hell, what was there left to hunt when everything was already dead? 3 days passed in hell's eternal twilight, and Garou learned the rules of damnation through violence and observation. The sinners respawned, that was the first revelation. The rat demon he'd killed on arrival reformed somewhere in the district's bowels, memories of his death intact but body restored. Death here wasn't permanent, it was a reset button on an infinite loop of suffering. The concept would have fascinated a philosopher. For Garou, it meant that every fight, every hunt was ultimately meaningless. He'd found shelter in an abandoned building on the edge of the cannibal district, close enough to the chaos to observe but far enough to avoid unnecessary conflict. The structure had been a theater once, judging by the torn velvet seats and shattered stage. Now it was a hollow shell, perfect for a monster who didn't want to be found. But hell had a way of making solitude impossible. Garou sensed them before they arrived. His refined instincts, honed through countless battles with heroes and monsters, picked up the signatures approaching his sanctuary. Multiple presences. One radiated that unbearable optimism he'd encountered 3 days ago. The others felt more dangerous. He was sitting in the theater's remains, shirtless, using a shard of mirror to examine the markings on his body. They hadn't faded since his arrival. If anything, they'd grown more defined, as if hell's atmosphere was somehow feeding whatever cosmic transformation had begun when he declared himself absolute evil. The front doors burst open. Charlie Morningstar entered first, flanked by an unusual crew. A small cyclops demon in a 1950s dress, her single eye blazing with suspicion and what looked like dynamite strapped to her belt. A massive winged cat demon built like a bar fighter, wearing a top hat and bow tie. And behind them, moving with predatory grace, a tall spider demon in a pink suit who looked like he'd walked out of a very different kind of hell. "See, I told you he was here," Charlie's voice echoed through the ruined theater. I could feel it. The Cyclops demon, nifty, Garou would learn, darted forward with disturbing speed, examining him from multiple angles. "Ooh, he's so dirty and bloody, can I clean him? Please, please, please." "Personal space, Nif," the spider demon drawled, pulling her back. Angel dust studied Garou with calculating eyes. "Though I gotta admit, Toots wasn't kidding. You really don't look like any sinner I've ever seen." Garou stood slowly. "I told you to stay away from me. And I told you the hotel's door is always open." Charlie stepped forward, undeterred by the cold violence in his posture. "You've been living in a condemned building for 3 days without food, water, or medical attention. That's not sustainable, even if you're—" She paused, studying the markings on his chest. "Whatever you are." "I'm a monster," Garou said flatly, "and monsters don't need redemption hotels." The large cat demon husk snorted. "Yeah, well, we're all monsters here, kid. Difference is, some of us are trying to be something else." "Why?" The question came out sharper than Garou intended. He'd been thinking about it for 3 days, unable to escape CH. Arlie's words, "You're dead, damned," What's the point of being something else when this is your eternity? Charlie's expression softened, because eternity is a long time to hate yourself. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Garou's hands clenched. You don't know anything about me. No, Charlie agreed, but I'd like to. And I think maybe you want to know about you too, or you wouldn't be sitting here alone asking yourself questions. Angel Dust whistled low. Damn, she got you there, tall, dark, and broody. Garou's instinct was to attack, to drive them away through overwhelming force. It's what the monster would do, what he'd always done when confronted with earnest concern that felt like mockery. But Charlie wasn't mocking him. There was no cruelty in her eyes, no hidden agenda he could detect, just genuine, almost painful hope. One night, he heard himself say, I'll stay one night at your hotel, then you leave me alone. Charlie's face lit up like hell's sky during an extermination. Really? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. You won't regret this, I promise. We have rooms and food and... I'm not participating in your redemption activities, Garou interrupted. I'll sleep there, that's it. Sure, whatever you need. Charlie was already heading for the door, the others following. Oh, this is so exciting, our first real new resident since... She stopped herself, something dark crossing her expression. Well, in a while. As they led him through hell's streets toward the hotel, Garou caught snippets of the Pride Ring's brutal hierarchy. Overlords ruled territories through violence and contracts. Soul deals bound sinners to eternal servitude. And once a year, angels descended to cull hell's population in an event called the Extermination, a systematic purge that killed sinners permanently. The Hazbin Hotel stood at the district's edge, an enormous structure that looked like someone had taken a dozen architectural styles and smashed them together with demonic flair. It was tacky, absurd, and somehow defiant in its cheerful presentation. Inside, the lobby was decorated with banners reading, "Welcome new residents," and furniture that looked like it had been assembled by someone who'd never seen furniture before. Behind the bar stood Husk, already pouring himself a drink. "Welcome to rehabilitation hell," he muttered. A door burst open and Alistair manifested from shadows, his perpetual smile widening as he saw Garou. "Ah, our mysterious arrival has accepted the princess's invitation. How delightful. I do hope you'll prove more interesting than our last guests." Garou's eyes narrowed. This one was dangerous, not in raw power, though he had that, but in the way he moved, spoke, existed. Alistair was a predator who turned hunting into an art form. "Alistair is our host," Charlie explained quickly, "and facility manager. He's been incredibly helpful with the hotel." "For my own amusement," Alistair added cheerfully, "I find the concept of redemption fascinatingly futile. Watching sinners fail to achieve it is better than any radio drama." "You're honest about being a monster," Garou observed. "Of course, why pretend otherwise?" Alistair's eyes glinted with dark humor. "Unlike you, dear boy, who seems caught between accepting what you are and running from it." The observation cut too close. Garou's fists clenched, but before violence could escalate, a massive explosion of flames erupted from the fireplace. The room's temperature skyrocketed, and from the flames stepped a figure that made even Garou pause. Short blonde with eyes that held the weight of countless eons, dressed in a white suit with a cane topped with an apple. The air around him bent reality in subtle ways that spoke to power beyond comprehension. "Dad," Charlie's voice cracked with surprise and something like fear. Lucifer Morningstar, King of Hell, tilted his head as he studied Garou. His smile was gentle, almost sad. "So you're the anomaly, the living human who fell into my realm through a crack in reality." He stepped closer, examining Garou like a puzzle to solve. "I've been feeling your presence since you arrived. You're not dead, not damned through traditional means. You're just lost." Garou met the devil's eyes and refused to flinch. "If you're here to throw me out, get on with it." Lucifer laughed, but there was no cruelty in it. "Throw you out, my boy, you're the most interesting thing to happen here in centuries. A human who became a monster by choice, who rejected heroism and hunted those who practiced it, who stood against God himself in pursuit of absolute evil." He tapped his cane thoughtfully. "And yet here you are, accepting my daughter's offer of redemption. Tell me, what changed?" "Nothing changed," Garou said coldly. "I'm just tired." "Tired," Lucifer repeated, tasting the word. "Yes, I know that feeling intimately, the exhaustion that comes from fighting what you are." He turned to Charlie, expression softening. He "And stay, but keep a close eye on him, Charlie. Monsters who don't know what they're fighting for are the most dangerous kind. With another burst of flame, the king of hell vanished, leaving heavy silence in his wake. Charlie turned to Garou, her smile returning but gentler now. "Let me show you to your room." As they climbed the hotel's winding stairs, past rooms occupied by sinners attempting the impossible, Garou couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just crossed a threshold he couldn't uncross. The hunt for heroes had ended. The battle against God had ended. But whatever was beginning here in hell's strangest hotel felt like it might be the hardest fight yet. Because fighting others was simple, fighting yourself was war. The room was simple: bed, desk, window overlooking hell's crimson skyline. Charlie had offered it with that unbearable hope still shining in her eyes, and Garou had accepted with a grunt that might have been thanks in another life. He didn't sleep that first night. Instead, he stood at the window, watching hell's districts pulse with violent life. Screams echoed from the entertainment sector. Explosions lit up the industrial zones. And somewhere in the distance, something massive moved between buildings, a creature of shadow and hunger that made the architecture itself recoil. This was a realm built on punishment and power hierarchies. It was everything he'd claimed to hate about hero society, distilled into its purest, most honest form. No pretense of justice, no false morality, just the strong preying on the weak in an eternal cycle. It should have felt familiar. Instead, it felt empty. Morning, if hell had mornings, brought a knock on his door. Garou opened it to find Angel Dust leaning against the frame, all four arms crossed, studying him with an expression that mixed curiosity with calculation. "So," the spider demon drawled, "Charlie's got us doing this whole trust exercise thing in an hour. Team building shit. Thought I'd warn you before she drags your broody ass downstairs." "I'm not participating," Garou said flatly. "Yeah, that's what I said when I got here." Angel pushed off the frame, moving past Garou into the room without invitation. "But Charlie's got this way of making you feel like an asshole for saying no. It's her superpower or something." Garou watched as Angel examined the sparse room, picking up nothing because there was nothing to pick up. "You work for someone," he observed, noting the slight tension in Angel's posture, the way his eyes flickered toward his phone. "Contract." Angel's smile tightened. "Ain't none of your business, tough guy." "I hunted heroes because they pretended to be free while serving systems that controlled them," Garou said, surprising himself with the honesty. "You're not free either. None of you are." "While profound, you figure that out all by yourself." Angel's sarcasm was a shield, but Garou recognized the defense mechanism. He'd used the same one. "Look, we're all trapped in our own private hells within hell. That's kind of the point. But Charlie thinks if we work together, share our trauma or whatever, we can somehow become better. And maybe she's full of shit, but at least she gives a damn, which is more than I can say for most people." Before Garou could respond, an explosion rocked the hotel. Both of them moved instantly, predatory instincts kicking in. They reached the lobby to find the front wall partially destroyed, smoke pouring through a massive hole. Through the smoke walked figures that radiated power, 3 of them each carrying themselves with the arrogance of hell's elite. Overlords. Garou recognized their kind, the same energy as S-class heroes, beings who transcended normal limits through violence or will. The leader was a demon with television screens for a head, each screen showing different expressions of sadistic amusement. Vox, the media overlord. Beside him was a moth demon with toxic pink smoke trailing from her wings, Valentino, Angel Dust's owner. And the third was a small but vicious-looking demon covered in social media symbols, Velvet, the youngest and newest overlord. Well, Vox's screens flickered with mock surprise. "We heard the princess was taking in strays, but this is pathetic even for you, Charlie." Charlie stood in the lobby's center, Vaggie at her side with a spear manifested. "You're not welcome here, Vox. This is neutral ground." "Neutral ground," Valentino's laugh was toxic. "Baby, there's no neutral ground in hell. Everything belongs to someone." His multiple eyes fixed on Angel Dust, "and some things belong to me." Angel's entire demeanor shifted, confidence crumbling into something haunted. Garou saw it, the same look prey animals got when cornered, the same look civilians showed when monsters appeared in their cities. "He's not going anywhere with you," Vaggie said, spear raised. Velvet rolled her eyes, already filming the confrontation with multiple phones. "This is going to be such good content, the Hazbin Hotel's first real test." Vox's screens focused on Garou, who'd remained silent, studying the overlords with predator interest. And who's this? Fresh meat. You don't look like a sinner. You look like something that wandered in from somewhere else. I did, Garou said simply. Ooh, mysterious. Vox's grin widened across his screens. Tell you what, stranger, these overlords run hell. We control the power, the souls, the entertainment. That pathetic hotel behind you, it's a joke. A fantasy peddled by a princess who doesn't understand her own realm. He gestured broadly. Join us instead. Someone with your presence could go far in hell's hierarchy. Garou looked at Vox, then at Valentino eyeing angel dust like property, then at Velvet commodifying suffering for views. He saw everything he'd hated about hero society reflected back through a demonic mirror. Power hoarded, the weak exploited, violence dressed up as necessary order. No, he said. No, Vox's screens flickered with confusion. Just no, kid, do you understand what we're offering? I understand exactly what you're offering. Garou stepped forward, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. I spent my life hunting heroes because they claim to help people while actually serving their own interests and maintaining systems that crushed anyone different. You're the same thing, just honest about being evil. Valentino's smile turned cruel. Cute speech, but you're in hell now, and speeches don't mean shit without power. Then let me show you power. Garou moved. The overlords were fast. Centuries of hell's combat had honed their reflexes. But Garou was faster. His hand caught Valentino's wings mid-strike, crushing the delicate membrane. The overlord screamed as toxic smoke poured out, and Garou threw him through the already destroyed wall. Vox's screens blazed with electricity. Lightning arced toward Garou, enough voltage to vaporize normal sinners. Garou's martial arts training kicked in. Water stream rock smashing fist adapted, evolved, redirecting the energy through his body and into the ground. The lobby floor cracked from the redirected power. Impossible, Vox hissed. You're human. Human monster, does it matter? Garou was already moving, closing the distance. His fist connected with Vox's screen face, and for a moment, every screen in Hell's entertainment district flickered and died. The overlord stumbled back, screens cracking. Velvet tried to run. Garou appeared in front of her, not striking, just standing there. Spread the word, he said quietly. The Hazbin Hotel is off limits. Anyone who comes here looking for a fight will find one. The three overlords retreated, battered and humiliated. As their shadows disappeared into Hell's streets, silence fell over the hotel. Everyone stared at Garou, Charlie with shock, Vaggie with calculation, Husk with grudging respect, and Angel Dust with something that might have been hope. You didn't have to do that, Charlie said softly. I didn't do it for you. Garou turned back toward the stairs. I did it because I'm tired of watching the strong prey on the weak, even in Hell, especially in Hell. As he climbed back to his room, he felt their eyes following him. The monster who'd rejected heroism, defending a hotel for redemption. The irony wasn't lost on him. But neither was the feeling that maybe, just maybe, he'd started hunting something new. Not heroes, not validation, but purpose in a realm where purpose was supposed to be impossible. Behind him, Alistair's laughter echoed through the lobby. Oh, this is going to be entertaining. That night the nightmares came. Garou didn't dream often. When he did, the dreams were memories, battlefields of flesh and concrete, heroes falling beneath his evolved fists, the taste of absolute evil as reality itself rejected his transformation. But tonight, the nightmare went deeper. He was 8 years old again, small and weak, standing in a school playground while children in hero costumes circled him like wolves. They'd chosen him to be the monster in their game, always the monster, never the hero. Monsters always lose, one shouted, and they descended on him with childish cruelty that carried adult malice. The dream shifted. He was 16, training alone in abandoned buildings because no dojo would accept him. Because he'd asked the question no one wanted to answer, what made heroes different from strong people who enjoyed violence. The dream shifted again. He stood before Bang, the old master who'd tried to save him, who'd seen potential beyond the growing darkness. You have the talent to be the greatest hero, Bang said in the memory. Why do you insist on this path? Because heroes are frauds, young Garou answered. They're popular because they're strong, and they're strong because they beat up unpopular monsters. It's just tyranny of the majority, so I'll become absolute evil. Then everyone will be equal in their F. Hear of me. The dream shattered. He was fighting Saitama, the hero who'd broken him not through technique or power scaling but through simple, devastating reality. Every evolution meaningless, every transformation insufficient. Until God himself offered power and Garou accepted, becoming something beyond human, beyond monster. And in that moment of ultimate strength, he'd realized his philosophy was empty. That his crusade against heroes was really a crusade against himself, the weak child who'd been bullied, who decided it was better to be the monster than the victim. Garou woke to find his room destroyed. He'd been fighting in his sleep, martial arts instincts turning the nightmare into physical reality. The bed was shattered, walls were cracked, and standing in the doorway was Charlie, who'd apparently heard the destruction. "Are you okay?" she asked, making no mention of the demolished room. "I'm fine," Garou said automatically, then stopped himself. "No, I'm not fine. I haven't been fine since I was 8 years old and learned that the world divides people into heroes and monsters based on popularity instead of morality." Charlie stepped carefully through the wreckage, sitting on a chunk of broken wall. "Tell me." "Why?" Garou's voice was harsh. "So you can understand me, fix me, turn me into one of your redemption success stories." "Because I think you need to say it out loud." Charlie's eyes held that impossible empathy. "And because maybe I understand more than you think." So Garou told her about the bullying, about being forced to play the monster in children's games, about watching heroes operate like celebrities while monsters were exterminated regardless of whether they'd actually hurt anyone, about his philosophy of absolute evil, the belief that if he became a threat too overwhelming to ignore, he could force heroes and humanity to unite against him, making everyone equal through shared terror. "I hunted heroes because I wanted them to prove they were different," he said quietly, "that they didn't just beat up the weak and call it justice, but they were exactly what I thought they were, strong people who enjoyed violence, just with better PR." "But Saitama was different," Charlie said. "It wasn't a question." Garou nodded. He didn't care about popularity, fame, recognition. He was just a hero because he decided to be. No grand philosophy, no trauma-driven crusade, just choice. He looked at his hands, still marked with the cosmic patterns of his transformation. "He broke my entire worldview by being the exception I claimed couldn't exist." "And then you came here," Charlie said softly. "And then I came here to hell, where everything I hated about hero society exists in pure form. Power hierarchies, the strong preying on the weak, eternal suffering marketed as justice." He met her eyes. "Why do you care about redemption, princess? You're Lucifer's daughter. You could rule however you wanted." Charlie was quiet for a moment, "Because I saw the exterminations. Every year angels descend and slaughter sinners permanently, not to restore balance or serve justice, but because heaven's afraid of hell's growing population. I watched souls who'd been here for decades, who'd learned and grown and changed, get erased because heaven couldn't be bothered to see them as anything but disposable." Her hands clenched, and I realized that if heaven isn't willing to redeem sinners, then hell has to find its own way to redemption. Because eternity without hope isn't punishment, it's just cruelty. Garou stared at her. "You're trying to overthrow the cosmic order because you believe sinners deserve second chances. And you became a monster because you believed victims of bullying deserved to be protected," Charlie countered. "We're not that different, Garou. We both saw injustice and decided to fight it, even if our methods were completely opposite." The observation hit like a physical blow. Garou had spent his entire life defining himself in opposition to heroes, never considering that his core motivation, protecting the weak, opposing tyranny, was fundamentally heroic, just filtered through trauma and executed through violence. "I don't know how to be anything but a monster," he admitted quietly. Charlie smiled, and for once it wasn't the overwhelming optimism that grated on him, it was understanding. "Good thing you're in a hotel for redemption, then. We specialize in helping people figure out who they want to be instead of what they've been." A knock interrupted them. Angel Dust stood in the destroyed doorway, looking uncomfortable. Sorry to interrupt the therapy session, but we got a problem. Word about yesterday's fight spread. Some overlords are pissed that a nobody human embarrassed the V's. They're calling for a trial." "A trial?" Garou asked. "Hell's version," Husk said, appearing behind Angel. "Combat trials. You beat whoever the overlords send, you earn your place. You lose, they decide your F. 8 could be servitude, could be permanent extermination, could be worse." Garou stood, stretching muscles that had destroyed rooms in nightmare violence. When? Tomorrow, the Colosseum in the Wrath Ring. Angel's multiple eyes showed concern. Look, I know you're tough, but these overlords have been killing for centuries. They know every dirty trick hell has to offer. Let them come. Garou's voice carried the cold certainty of a predator who'd never backed down from a hunt. I've fought gods and broke heroes. Overlords are just strong sinners with delusions of authority. As he walked past them toward what remained of the door, Charlie called out, Garou, you don't have to do this alone. We can help. He paused, considering. In his world, he'd always fought alone. Accepting help meant admitting weakness, and monsters couldn't afford weakness. But he wasn't in his world anymore. And maybe, just maybe, being strong enough to accept help was harder than being strong enough to fight alone. Fine, he said without turning around, but anyone who helps needs to understand, I won't hold back, and I won't be responsible for what happens when I stop being human and let the monster out. As he headed to prepare for Hell's trial, Garou didn't notice the satisfied smile on Alistair's face or the concern in Charlie's eyes. He was too focused on the question that had been eating at him since his arrival. In a realm built for punishment, what did it mean to hunt for redemption? And if he found it, would the monster that defined his existence survive the discovery? Tomorrow's trial would provide answers. Whether he'd like those answers was another question entirely. The Colosseum rose from Hell's Wrath Ring like a monument to violence itself, ancient stone fused with infernal architecture, seats carved from bone and obsidian stretching upward into the crimson sky. Thousands of sinners packed the stands, their screams and anticipation creating a sound like static electricity before a storm. Garou stood in the preparation chamber beneath the arena, feeling the vibrations of bloodthirsty crowds through solid rock. The Hazbin Hotel crew surrounded him, Charlie nervously reviewing papers, Vaggie sharpening her spear, Husk drinking steadily from a flask, Angel Dust checking his weapons, and Alistair humming a tune that predated radio itself. The rules are simple, Vaggie explained, though her tone suggested nothing about Hell's combat trials was simple. 3 rounds, 3 opponents chosen by the Overlord Council. You fight until they can't continue or you can't. Death isn't permanent here, but losing means you're at their mercy. And overlords aren't known for mercy, Husk added darkly. Garou said nothing. He'd removed his shirt, the black and crimson markings on his torso seeming to pulse with anticipation. His body remembered every evolution, every transformation that had pushed him beyond human limits. The cosmic patterns etched into his flesh were scars from touching absolute power, and they still carried echoes of that strength. You sure about this, tough guy? Angel asked, all 4 arms crossed. It ain't too late to make a run for it. I know some places even overlords won't look. Running is for prey, Garou said simply. I'm a predator. A massive door ground open and hellish sunlight poured into the chamber. The roar of the crowd intensified. Charlie stepped forward, her hand hovering near his shoulder before pulling back, respecting the distance he maintained. Just try not to die, okay? She said, attempting lightness but failing to hide genuine worry. I've fought God and survived, Garou replied, moving toward the entrance. Overlords are just sinners who have forgotten what real power looks like. As he emerged into the arena, the scale of Hell's spectacle hit him. Every major overlord occupied luxury boxes, Vox's screens glowing with satisfaction, Valentino smoking something toxic and sweet, others he didn't recognize but whose power signatures radiated through the crowd. And in the highest box, watching with ancient, amused eyes, sat Lucifer himself with Charlie's mother, Lilith, beside him, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. The arena floor was stained with centuries of blood and ash. Weapons from countless eras littered the sand, swords, guns, implements of torture that had never existed on Earth, but Garou ignored them all. He'd learned long ago that the greatest weapon was the body refined through absolute martial discipline. A voice boomed across the Colosseum, magnified by Hell's acoustics. Vox, playing announcer from his box. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted sinners, today we witness a trial of power. The living human who dared embarrass Hell's elite must now prove his worth against our finest warriors. The crowd's roar was deafening. Round 1, Vox's screens blazed with excitement. From the Greed Ring's fighting pits, undefeated in 300 years of combat, Mammon's champion. The Apple. Sight gate exploded outward. What emerged made the crowd scream with bloodlust. A demon 15 feet tall, covered in scales of actual gold, with 6 arms each wielding a different weapon forged from avarice itself. Its eyes burned with the green fire of endless hunger. The champion roared, and the sound carried the weight of centuries of victories. It charged, 6 weapons moving in perfect coordination, each strike capable of shattering stone. Garou didn't move until the last possible moment. Then he flowed like water, applying the techniques Bang had taught him before he'd rejected the path of heroes. Water stream rock smashing fist, the defensive martial art he'd mastered and evolved into something far more dangerous. 6 weapons struck where he'd been standing. Garou was already inside the champion's guard, his fist driving into the demon's solar plexus with surgical precision. The impact created a shockwave that cracked the arena floor. The champion stumbled backward, shock registering in its burning eyes. Nothing had hurt it in 3 centuries. This human had staggered it with a single blow. Interesting, Garou observed, watching how the demon's armor absorbed damage. You rely on accumulated power and defensive mass. You've never had to actually fight someone who understood technique. The champion roared again, but this time Garou heard fear beneath the rage. It attacked with desperate fury, all 6 weapons creating a storm of lethal strikes. The crowd leaned forward, expecting to see the human torn apart. Instead, they watched something impossible. Garou moved through the weapon storm like a ghost, each dodge minimal, conserving energy while the champion expended massive amounts. And with every near miss, Garou's counterstrikes found weak points, joints, gaps in the golden armor, pressure points that existed even in demonic anatomy. The fight lasted 3 minutes. When it ended, Mammon's champion lay motionless in the sand, all 6 weapons shattered, its golden armor cracked like an egg. Garou stood over it, not even breathing hard. Silence fell across the Colosseum. Then slowly the crowd erupted, not in anger but in bloodthirsty appreciation. They'd come for violence, and violence had been delivered with terrifying efficiency. In the hotel's box, Charlie gripped the railing. "He's barely trying," she whispered. "Oh, he's trying," Alistair corrected, smile widening. "He's trying not to enjoy it. Notice how controlled his movements are, how he's measuring every strike. That's a man fighting his own nature." Vagi's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "He's a predator who's decided hunting is wrong," Alistair explained, delighted by the contradiction. "Every instinct in his body wants to tear these opponents apart, to revel in the superiority that's always defined him. But he's restraining himself. How fascinating, how deliciously conflicted." In the royal box, Lucifer leaned toward Lilith. "What do you see?" "A soul at war with itself," Lilith replied, her voice carrying the wisdom of eons. "He's powerful enough to end these trials in seconds, but he's holding back, trying to prove something to himself." "That he's not a monster," Lucifer suggested. "That he can choose what kind of monster to be," Lilith corrected. Vox's voice crackled across the arena, forced enthusiasm covering irritation. An impressive display, but round 1 was merely a warm-up. Round 2 brings us. The gates exploded with hellfire. What emerged made even Garou pause. A fallen angel, one of the exorcists who'd chosen hell over heaven after too many purges had broken their faith. Its armor was white stained with blood, wings magnificent and terrible, and in its hands it held a weapon forged from divine light itself. "A warrior who fought for heaven," Vox announced, "who killed thousands of sinners in the name of holy purges, now fighting for hell's entertainment, the fallen seraph." The angel locked eyes with Garou, and he saw something familiar there. Disillusionment, a belief system shattered, someone who'd followed orders until those orders revealed the truth behind righteous violence. "You hunt heroes," the angel said, voice echoing with otherworldly resonance. "I exterminated sinners. We're the same warriors who realized our causes were lies." "We're nothing alike," Garou replied. "I chose my path, you followed orders." "And which is worse?" the angel attacked, moving with speed that exceeded the champion's by orders of magnitude. Divine light carved through the air, each strike capable of permanent death even in hell. This fight was different. The angel had technique, centuries of combat against demons who'd evolved specifically to counter holy weapons. It pressed Garou, forcing him to adapt, to evolve his defenses against attacks that burned with righteous power. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the two warriors moved faster than most sinners could track. Garou's martial arts met angelic sword techniques in a display that transcended mere violence. It was art, deadly and beautiful, two philosophies of combat colliding with universe-shaking force. "You're holding back," the angel observed between exchanges. "Why? Afraid of what you'll become if you let go." Garou's response was a strike that shattered the angel's divine weapon. "I've already become it. I'm trying to figure out what comes after." The angel stumbled, weaponless, and in that moment Garou could have ended it. One strike to the head, simple, final, the monster's solution. Instead, he stepped back. "You asked which is worse, choosing evil or following orders," Garou said. "Neither. What's worse is having the power to choose and being too afraid to find a better path." The angel stared at him, then slowly knelt, signaling surrender. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some booed the mercy, others roared approval at the philosophy demonstrated through combat. Charlie's eyes were wide, he spared them. Against every instinct screaming in his predator brain, Alistair observed, "Oh, this is delicious. The monster discovering restraint. I wonder how long it will last." Vox's screens flickered with barely controlled rage. 2 rounds defeated, and the human hadn't even transformed into whatever cosmic horror his markings suggested. "Round 3, he roared. "Our final challenge, from the depths of the Wrath Ring itself, a warrior who's never known defeat." The entire Colosseum shook. What emerged from the final gate made Garou's predator instincts scream danger. A demon that radiated pure martial prowess, built like a fighter, covered in scars from countless battles. Its eyes held the cold intelligence of a true warrior, not a brute, not a savage, but someone who'd refined violence into philosophy. "Hell's martial king." The demon stepped into the arena and immediately dropped into a fighting stance Garou recognized. It was similar to his own, efficient, deadly, evolved through actual combat rather than training alone. "Finally," the martial king said, voice calm, "someone who understands." Garou felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't prey. This wasn't a challenge to overcome. This was a mirror, another being who'd found purpose through the perfection of combat. "Let's see," the king continued, "which philosophy survives. Your hunt for justice through strength, or my acceptance that strength is justice." They moved simultaneously, and the real fight began. The arena floor shattered beneath their exchange. Technique met technique, evolution met adaptation, and 2 warriors who transcended normal limits tested each other's absolute peak. No divine weapons, no golden armor, just pure martial arts refined to its highest possible expression. The crowd fell silent, watching something they'd never seen before. Art created through violence, philosophy expressed through combat, 2 souls communicating in the only language they truly understood. And in that moment, fighting someone who actually challenged him, Garou felt the monster inside beginning to stir. The cosmic markings on his body began to glow. His movements became less controlled, more instinctive. The evolution that had nearly destroyed his world started to awaken. In the hotel box, Charlie gripped the railing until her knuckles turned white. "He's changing." "He's letting go," Alistair corrected, fascinated. "The question is, will he stop himself, or will we see what happens when a living human becomes absolute evil in hell itself?" The martial king struck with enough force to crater stone, and Garou caught the blow with techniques that went beyond what any martial artist should have mastered. His body moved with mechanical precision, each defense flowing into offense, every counterstrike calculated for maximum efficiency. But something was wrong. Garou felt it in his core, the familiar hunger that had consumed him during his evolution, the desire to push beyond limits, to become something that transcended categorization. The monster was waking up. His counterstrike shattered the king's guard. The demon stumbled back, shock registering for the first time. "Impossible. Your power is increasing mid-battle." "It's what I do," Garou heard himself say, voice taking on the cold edge of absolute confidence. "I evolve, I adapt. Every opponent makes me stronger. That's what it means to be a monster." The markings on his body blazed brighter. His muscles expanded, technique giving way to overwhelming physical superiority. This was the beginning, the path that had led him to challenge God itself, and it felt terrifyingly natural. In the royal box, Lucifer leaned forward, genuinely interested. "He's transforming. using hell's ambient energy to fuel an evolution that shouldn't be possible for living humans. "Should we stop this?" Lilith asked, concern touching her ancient features. "And miss the show?" Lucifer's smile was sad. "Let's see if Charlie's influence means anything, or if the monster is all that's left." But in the hotel box, Charlie wasn't watching the fight. She was watching Alastair, whose smile had taken on a different quality, anticipation mixed with calculation. "You're planning something," she accused. "My dear princess, I'm always planning something." Alastair's radio-static voice carried amusement, but in this case, I'm simply facilitating a choice. Before Charlie could respond, Alastair's shadow detached from his body, sliding across the Colosseum with impossible speed. It reached the arena floor and whispered something to Garou, something the crowd couldn't hear, something that made the evolving fighter pause mid-transformation. "What did you tell him?" Vaggie demanded, spear manifested and aimed at Alastair's throat. "Just a reminder," Alastair said cheerfully, ignoring the weapon. "That absolute evil defeated by a hero named Saitama still ended up in hell, so perhaps becoming absolute evil again won't solve anything." In the arena, Garou stood frozen, the martial king circling cautiously. The words had cut through the evolution's momentum, pulling him back from the edge. His markings dimmed slightly as consciousness reasserted control. "You're hesitating," the king observed. "Why? Power is there for the taking. I can feel it radiating from you. Become what you're meant to be and end this." "What I'm meant to be," Garou repeated, voice rough. He looked at his hands, still marked, still dangerous, but human, barely. "I spent my entire life becoming what I thought I was meant to be. It almost destroyed everything." "Then what are you now?" The question hung in hell's blood-stained air. Garou lowered his hands, the evolution reversing, power receding back into controlled channels. "I don't know, but I'm not going to find out by repeating the same mistakes." He moved, not with overwhelming power, but with precise technique. The martial king defended, but Garou's strikes carried something beyond physical force. They carried intention, purpose. Each blow asked a question the king couldn't answer. The fight ended not with a devastating explosion, but with a submission hold that left the demon conscious but completely immobilized. Garou had won through technique, not transformation, through choice, not evolution. The Colosseum erupted in chaos, some cheering, others booing, all confused by the display of restraint from a warrior who clearly possessed apocalyptic power. Vox's screens flickered with barely controlled rage. "The trial is complete. The human has proven his worth." The words came out like poison. "By law of combat, he's earned his place in hell's hierarchy." Garou released the martial king and stood, looking up at the overlord boxes. "I don't want a place in your hierarchy. Keep your power structures and territorial games. I'm staying at the Hazbin Hotel." The declaration sent shockwaves through the crowd. To reject power in hell was to reject hell's fundamental nature. It was heresy against damnation itself. In the royal box, Lucifer laughed, genuine, delighted laughter. "Oh, Charlie, your stray is more interesting than I thought." As Garou walked back toward the preparation chambers, the Colosseum erupted into arguments and speculation. But he ignored it all, focused only on reaching the hotel crew. Charlie met him at the entrance, and for once, he didn't flinch from the concern in her eyes. "You stopped yourself," she said quietly. "Alastair reminded me that becoming a monster again wouldn't change anything," Garou replied, then quieter, "and maybe I'm tired of being defined by what I can destroy." They returned to the hotel in tense silence, aware that while Garou had won his trial, he'd also made a declaration that would ripple through hell's power structure. Rejecting the hierarchy meant rejecting the rules that kept hell stable. It was revolutionary, dangerous. And Alastair couldn't have been more pleased. Back at the hotel, the radio demon materialized in the lobby, his ever-present smile somehow wider. "Congratulations on your victory, though I must say, your restraint was either admirably philosophical or terribly wasteful." "What game are you playing?" Garou demanded, recognizing a manipulator when he saw one. "Game, my dear boy, I'm playing all of them simultaneously." Alastair's laughter crackled like static. "You see, I find redemption fascinating precisely because I don't believe in it. Watching sinners try and fail entertains me endlessly. But you," he circled Garou like a predator sizing up prey, You're not trying to redeem yourself. You're trying to figure out what you are now that your entire identity has been shattered. That's far more interesting. So you helped him, Charlie asked, suspicious. Helped, hindered, does it matter? Alistair's eyes gleamed with dark amusement. I simply reminded him of reality. What he does with that reminder is his choice, though I'll admit I'm curious to see which path he takes, the monster who learns to care, or the caring soul who discovers monsters were. He's human all along. Before anyone could respond, the hotel doors burst open. Angel Dust stumbled in, looking more shaken than they'd ever seen him. We got a problem, a big one. What now? Vaggie groaned. Valentino saw the fight. Angel's multiple hands trembled. He says if someone as powerful as Garou can choose where he belongs, then contracts don't mean shit. He's coming here, tonight, and he's bringing every soul he owns as leverage. The hotel fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Valentino wasn't just threatening Angel. He was challenging the entire concept of the hotel by asserting ownership over redemption itself. Garou felt the monster stir again, but this time it wasn't evolution calling. It was something else. Something that had been buried beneath years of hunting and philosophy and transformation. Protectiveness. Let him come, Garou said quietly. I rejected hero society because heroes chose who to save based on popularity and convenience. I became a monster to force equality through fear, but maybe there's a third option. Which is? Charlie asked. Being strong enough to protect without needing validation for it. Garou looked at Angel, seeing past the facade to the trapped soul underneath. You're part of the hotel. That means something, even in hell, especially in hell. Angel stared at him, something breaking in his expression. You barely know me, tough guy. Why would you? Because choosing who deserves protection is what made heroes frauds, Garou interrupted. If I'm trying to be something different, that starts with protecting people regardless of whether it's convenient. Alistair's smile shifted into something almost genuine. Oh, this is delicious. The monster becomes the protector. I wonder how long that will last when Valentino demonstrates what ownership really means in hell. As night fell over the Pride Ring, the hotel prepared for conflict. But Garou stood at the window of his repaired room, watching hell's streets fill with Valentino's contract-bound army, and wondered if choosing to protect instead of hunt was just another form of evolution. Or if maybe, just maybe, it was the first honest choice he'd made since becoming a monster. Valentino arrived with fanfare designed to humiliate, a procession of the souls he owned, hundreds of sinners bound by contracts written in desperation and signed in blood. They filled the street outside the Hazbin Hotel, a living monument to hell's most profitable industry, exploitation dressed as opportunity. The moth demon himself rode in a chariot pulled by contract slaves, toxic pink smoke trailing from his wings like perfume made from suffering. His smile was wide, confident, cruel. Charlie darling, he called out, voice dripping with false affection. We need to discuss your new pet. You see, his little display at the Colosseum has given some of my properties ideas about freedom, about choice. His multiple eyes glinted dangerously. We can't have that, can we? The hotel's defenders stood in the lobby, Charlie and Vaggie at the front, Husk behind the bar with bottles that weren't just drinks, Nifty armed with cleaning supplies that doubled as weapons, and Alistair watching from the shadows with amused interest. Angel Dust stood slightly apart, visibly torn between the safety of the hotel and the pull of a contract that went deeper than physical binding. And Garou stood by the shattered front doors, studying the army of owned souls with the cold calculation of a predator analyzing prey. Those sinners, he said quietly, they're not here by choice. Of course not, Valentino laughed. They're mine, bought, paid for, owned, just like Angel Dust is mine, regardless of where he sleeps at night. Angel flinched at the words and Garou saw it, the same powerless terror he'd seen on civilians when monsters attacked, when heroes arrived too late or not at all. The look that had driven him to hunt heroes in the first place. No, Garou said simply. Valentino's smile faltered. No. You don't own him. A contract signed under duress isn't ownership, it's slavery, and I've had enough of watching the strong exploit the weak. The street went silent. Even Valentino's army of contract slaves seemed to hold their breath. Challenging a soul contract in hell was like challenging gravity. It was fundamental law, enforced by reality itself. "Bold words," Valentino said, smile returning but colder now. "Let me show you what ownership means." He gestured and angel dust convulsed. The contract burned in his soul, ancient magic asserting control. His body moved against his will, walking toward Valentino with mechanical steps. "Stop fighting it, angel baby," Valentino cooed. "You know resistance only makes it hurt more." Garou watched Angel struggle, saw the soul-deep agony of having autonomy stripped away. And something in him snapped, not into evolution, not into monster transformation, but into cold, absolute fury. "Charlie," he said quietly, "you believe sinners can be redeemed." "Yes," she replied, unsure where this was going. "Then they must have free will, because redemption without choice isn't redemption, it's just training." He stepped forward toward the crowd of owned souls. "And if they have free will, then contracts that override that will are violations of hell's own potential for growth." "That's not how hell works," Valentino snarled. "Then maybe hell works wrong." Garou moved before anyone could stop him. He appeared in front of angel dust, and his hand, marked with cosmic patterns, touched the spider demon's chest where the contract burned brightest. What happened next defied hell's laws. The markings on Garou's body flared with the same power that had allowed him to match God himself. He'd evolved beyond human limits by becoming absolute evil, but those same evolutionary powers had also adapted to divine energy, to cosmic forces that transcended mortal understanding. The contract resisted. Ancient magic woven by hell's foundational rules pushed back, but Garou had fought reality itself and survived. A soul contract, no matter how powerful, was nothing compared to the forces he'd endured. With a sound like breaking glass, the contract shattered. Angel dust collapsed, gasping, his soul suddenly his own for the first time in decades. The shock rippled through every contract slave in the street. They'd felt it, the impossible severing of bonds thought eternal. Valentino's facade cracked completely. "Impossible, you can't, that's not." "I just did," Garou's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty, "and I'll do it again for every sinner here who wants freedom instead of ownership." The contract slaves stirred. Hope, dangerous, revolutionary hope, sparked in eyes that had been dead for years. If one contract could break, maybe others could too. Valentino's rage exploded. "You have no idea what you've done. Contracts are hell's foundation. They're how we maintain order, how we prevent chaos." "Then your order deserves chaos," Garou replied. The moth demon attacked with everything he had: toxic smoke that dissolved flesh, wings that cut like blades, the accumulated power of centuries of exploitation. The Khan. Track slaves surged forward on his command, still bound, still controlled. But Garou had evolved by fighting increasingly powerful opponents. Valentino was dangerous, but compared to heroes who could destroy cities or the cosmic forces that had tried to erase his existence, the Overlord was manageable. He moved through the attack like water, applying techniques perfected through countless battles. Every strike was precise, designed not to kill but to disable, to remove threats without creating corpses, because corpses in hell just respawned and killing accomplished nothing. But something unexpected happened. As Garou fought, his cosmic markings pulsed in sync with the breaking contract magic, and wherever he struck a contract slave, their bindings weakened, not breaking entirely but cracking, showing them that freedom was possible. The realization hit Valentino like a physical blow. You're not just strong, you're a virus, a corruption that spreads. Every fight, every contact, you're breaking my contracts just by existing near them. Good, Garou said, and there was satisfaction in his voice. Maybe that's what hell needs, a virus that infects ownership with the possibility of choice. Valentino tried to retreat, but Charlie stepped forward, blocking his path. For the first time since the confrontation began, the Princess of Hell's demonic nature showed. Her eyes blazed with power inherited from Lucifer himself, and her voice carried authority that made the street tremble. "You come to my hotel, threaten my residence, and demonstrate exactly why hell needs redemption," she said, each word heavy with royal command. "Angel Dust stays here. His contract is broken, and if you ever try to reclaim him, you'll deal with me, not as the princess who runs a hotel, as the daughter of the king who rules this realm." The threat was unmistakable. Valentino could fight Garou. He could probably survive conflict with the hotel's defenders, but Charlie, backed by Lucifer's authority, was another matter entirely. The Moth Demon's retreat was tactical, but his parting words carried venom. "You've made an enemy of the V's, Princess, and your pet monster has declared war on Hell's fundamental structure. We'll see how long your little redemption project survives." As Valentino and his diminished army left, the street erupted in chaos. Contract slaves who'd felt their bindings weaken scattered, some fleeing toward the hotel, others disappearing into Hell's districts to process the impossible thing they'd witnessed. Inside the hotel, Angel Dust collapsed against the bar, shaking. His chest, where the contract had burned for so long, was clear, unmarked, free. "I don't understand," he whispered. "Contracts can't be broken, it's fundamental law." "Laws can be changed," Garou said, exhaustion finally showing. Breaking a Hell contract had cost him more than physical strength. It had required pushing his evolutionary abilities in directions they'd never gone, using power meant for destruction to instead liberate. If they couldn't, nothing would ever get better. Charlie approached him, expression complex. "What you did, it's going to have consequences. Every overlord in Hell is going to see you as a threat now." "I was a threat the moment I arrived," Garou replied. "At least now I'm threatening something that deserves it." Alistair's laughter filled the lobby, delighted and slightly unhinged. "Oh, this is magnificent. The monster who hunted heroes becomes the liberator who breaks chains. The irony is exquisite. I wonder, does this count as redemption, or have you simply found a more interesting way to rebel?" Garou ignored him, too tired to engage with the radio demon's philosophy. But the question lingered as he climbed to his room, leaving the others to process what had happened. He'd spent his life hunting heroes because they chose who to save based on popularity. He'd become a monster to force equality through terror. And now, in Hell itself, he'd broken fundamental laws to protect someone who'd shown him nothing but cautious friendliness. Was this heroism, or just another form of hunting, targeting oppression instead of oppressors? The markings on his body pulsed gently, containing power that had touched divine forces and cosmic absolutes. Power that had evolved not just to destroy, but to liberate. As Garou collapsed on his bed, a thought occurred that would have been unimaginable months ago. Maybe the monster and the hero weren't opposites. Maybe they were just different expressions of the same fundamental drive to change a world that felt unbearably wrong. And if that was true, then perhaps redemption wasn't about becoming something new. It was about understanding what you'd always been beneath the anger and the evolution and the hunt. The night after the contract breaking, the hotel was quiet in a way that felt deliberate. Everyone was processing what had happened, what it meant for Hell's power structure, what it meant for the possibility of change. Garou couldn't sleep again. He stood on the hotel's roof, looking out over the Pride Ring's chaotic sprawl when he heard footsteps behind him. Angel Dust emerged from the stairwell, moving with a lightness that hadn't been there before. Without the contract's weight, the spider demon seemed younger somehow, less performative. "Figured I'd find you up here," Angel said, leaning against the roof's edge beside Garou. "You're not exactly a social butterfly." Garou said nothing, waiting. He'd learned that silence often brought out truth people wouldn't share otherwise. "I've been under contract for 60 years, Angel continued, voice losing its usual sass. 60 years of having someone else decide what I do, who I see, how I exist. I'd forgotten what choice felt like." He looked at his hands, 4 of them trembling slightly. "I don't know who I am without that control. Isn't that fucked up?" "No," Garou replied quietly, "it's honest." Angel laughed bitterly. "Says the guy who knows exactly what he is, a monster, a hero hunter, whatever." "I don't know what I am," Garou corrected. "I thought I did. I built an entire philosophy around being absolute evil, around hunting heroes to prove they were frauds. And then I met a hero who wasn't a fraud and my whole identity shattered." He looked at his marked hands. "I'm as lost as you are, maybe more, because at least you know what you're recovering from. I don't even know what I'm becoming." The admission hung between them, vulnerability offered and received. "You saved me," Angel said softly. "Not because it benefited you, not because you wanted something from me, you just did it because you thought it was right." He turned to face Garou directly. "Do you know how rare that is, in life or Hell, someone doing the right thing without expecting payment?" "It wasn't that noble," Garou admitted. I hated seeing you controlled because it reminded me of everything I fought against. The strong exploiting the weak, systems maintaining power through ownership. I didn't save you for you. I saved you because I needed to prove I could choose something different. Still counts, Angel said firmly. Motivation doesn't change results. You broke an eternal contract because you thought ownership was wrong. He struggled for words. That's the most heroic thing anyone's done for me, ever. Garou flinched at the word heroic like it was a physical blow. Don't call me that. Why not? You got something against being good. I have something against the lie of heroism, Garou replied harshly. Heroes in my world saved people to feel good about themselves, to maintain social hierarchies, to look impressive. They called it justice, but it was just another power structure. And what you did yesterday Garou stopped, forced to confront his own motivations honestly, was different. I didn't do it for recognition, for validation. I did it because watching you be controlled made me angry, and breaking that control felt like finally fighting something that deserved to be fought. Angel studied him for a long moment. You know what I think? I think you're so afraid of becoming the fake heroes you hated that you can't recognize when you're doing actual heroic shit. Not hero worship bullshit, just being decent when it costs you something. The words cut deeper than Angel probably intended, because he was right. Garou had built his entire identity in opposition to heroes, never considering that maybe his rejection of false heroism had blinded him to genuine virtue. I was abused, Angel said suddenly, changing topics but not really. In life, by my family. They were mobsters and I was the disappointment, gay, flamboyant, everything they hated, so they beat it out of me, or tried to. His voice went distant. I died in a shootout, ended up here, and immediately fell into Valentino's trap because he promised protection. Just like my family promised family. Same lie, different realm. Garou listened without interrupting, recognizing the courage it took to share trauma. You know what the worst part was, Angel continued. I started believing I deserved it, that this was just what I got for being me. The contract became comfortable because at least I knew what to expect. Pain I understood was better than freedom I couldn't trust. I was bullied, Garou found himself saying. Words he'd never spoken aloud, not even to Bang. As a kid, they made me play the monster in their hero games, always the monster, never good enough to be the hero. His hands clenched, and I started believing it, that I was the monster. So I decided if that's what I was, I'd be the best monster possible. I'd hunt heroes and become absolute evil and force everyone to acknowledge that their hero worship was just disguised tyranny. Did it work? Angel asked quietly. No, the admission hurt. It just made me lonelier, more isolated, more convinced that I was right and everyone else was wrong, until I met someone who actually was a hero, not for recognition or power, but because he decided to be. And it broke everything I'd built my identity on. They stood in silence, two souls shaped by abuse and rejection, finding unexpected common ground on a hotel rooftop in hell. Maybe that's what redemption is, Angel suggested. Not becoming something new, but figuring out how to be yourself without the defense mechanisms trauma forced on you. Garou considered this. His defense mechanism had been to become exactly what people feared, to claim the monster role so completely that he controlled the narrative. Angel's defense had been to accept exploitation as inevitable, to perform a version of himself that kept him safe through usefulness. Charlie thinks everyone can be redeemed, Garou said. Charlie thinks redemption is possible, Angel corrected. There's a difference. She's not trying to fix us. She's trying to give us space to fix ourselves. He smiled, and for once it wasn't performative. That's why the hotel works when it works. She's not judging what we were. She's supporting what we're trying to become. And what are you trying to become? Garou asked. Someone who doesn't need to perform to survive, Angel replied. Someone who can be Anthony, my real name, instead of Angel Dust, the porn star. He looked at Garou. What about you? Someone who can be strong without hunting, Garou said slowly, working through the thought as he spoke. Someone who can protect without needing validation for it. Someone who, he paused, the next words difficult. Someone who can choose to care without it feeling like weakness. Angel bumped his shoulder against Garou's. You're already doing that, tough guy. You just haven't admitted it yet. Before Garou could respond, an alarm shattered the night's quiet. Both of them turned to see distant explosions lighting up the entertainment district, and rising above the chaos, broadcast across every screen in hell, was Vox's face. Citizens of Hell, the media overlord announced, we interrupt your regularly scheduled suffering to bring breaking news. The living human residing at the Hazbin Hotel has been designated a universal threat, not just to Hell's hierarchy, but to the very concept of damnation itself. The broadcast shifted, showing footage from the Colosseum, from the contract breaking, from Garou's arrival. But it was edited, manipulated, made to look like an invasion rather than an accident. This anomaly, Vox continued, has broken fundamental laws, rejected earned power, and spread revolutionary ideas about choice and redemption. Ideas that threaten everything Hell represents. His screens blazed with righteous fury. Therefore, the Overlord Council has declared a universal bounty. Any sinner who eliminates or captures the human known as Garou will receive territory, power, and a seat at the Overlord table. The broadcast ended, but its impact rippled through Hell immediately. Lights began moving toward the hotel, hundreds, thousands of sinners mobilizing for the bounty. Angel's eyes widened. Oh shit, they just put a target on your back big enough to be seen from heaven. Garou watched the approaching masses with cold assessment. Let them come, I've fought armies before. This is different, Angel said urgently. These aren't organized soldiers, they're desperate sinners who see you as their ticket to power. They won't stop, they'll just keep respawning and coming back until... Until what? Garou interrupted. Until they kill me. I've been killed before, it didn't stick. He looked at Angel. But you're free now, you don't have to stay here and be part of this. Angel laughed sharp, almost angry. You break my contract, give me actual freedom for the first time in decades, and you think I'm gonna run? Fuck that, you chose to protect me. I'm choosing to stand with you. That's stupid, Garou said, but there was something in his voice that wasn't quite irritation. Welcome to redemption, asshole. It's all stupid choices that matter more than smart ones that don't. As they headed back inside to prepare for the siege, Garou realized something profound. He wasn't alone anymore. Not because he'd been strong enough to earn companionship, but because he'd been vulnerable enough to accept it. The monster who'd hunted alone was learning that true strength might not be about individual power. It might be about choosing to stand with others, even when, especially when, it would be safer to stand alone. And that terrified him more than any army could. The army came at dawn, if Hell's eternal twilight could be called dawn. Thousands of sinners driven by desperation and greed, seeing Garou not as a person but as currency toward power. The Hazbin Hotel stood in their path like a lighthouse in a storm of violence, absurd in its colorful defiance. Inside, the defenders prepared. Charlie had erected barriers using her demonic power, shimmering walls of inherite. The authority that made the air taste of sulfur and old magic. Vaggie coordinated defensive positions with military precision. Husk fortified the bar with bottles that exploded on contact. Nifty rigged traps with disturbing enthusiasm. And Alistair watched from the shadows, smile wide, clearly delighted by the chaos. Angel Dust stood beside Garou at the main entrance, all four arms armed with weapons pulled from the hotel's surprisingly extensive armory. Last chance to run, tough guy. I don't run, Garou replied, watching the advancing horde. I hunt. Yeah, but there's like 3,000 of them, and one of you. Garou's smile was cold, then the odds are almost even. The first wave hit like a tsunami of desperation. Sinners from every era of Hell's existence, gangsters with Tommy guns, medieval warriors with cursed blades, modern thugs with improvised weapons. They crashed against Charlie's barriers, and when those shattered under sustained assault, they met something worse. Garou moved through them like a force of nature. Every technique he'd mastered, every evolution he'd survived, every battle he'd endured had refined him into something beyond simple violence. He was efficiency incarnate, each strike disabling multiple opponents, every movement conserving energy while maximizing impact. But they kept coming and coming and coming. This is insane, Angel shouted, firing into the horde while staying close to Garou's defensive radius. They're not even coordinating, they're just throwing themselves at you. Because the bounty makes it worth dying repeatedly, Garou observed, catching a blade meant for Angel's back and redirecting it into its wielder. Dying means nothing here. Eventually I'll exhaust, then they win. Charlie's voice cut through the chaos from her defensive position. We need to retreat, fall back to the inner hotel. We can bottleneck them. No, The voice thundered across the battlefield with enough force to freeze every combatant mid-strike. Reality rippled, the sky darkened from crimson to absolute black, and descending from the void came power so overwhelming that even Garou's predator instincts screamed to submit. Lucifer Morningstar manifested not in his gentle, depressed father form, but in the full terrible glory of what he'd been before the fall. Wings of light and shadow that spanned city blocks, eyes that held the memory of creation itself, power that made the air scream just by existing in three-dimensional space. The King of Hell landed between the hotel and the army with enough force to crater the street. Every sinner present felt the weight of his judgment pressing down on their souls. Enough. The word wasn't shouted, it was spoken with the quiet certainty of someone who'd literally helped design the universe, but it carried across Hell's entire pride ring, echoing through districts and dimensions. The army froze, not from choice but from overwhelming presence. This was the being who'd rebelled against heaven itself, who'd been cast down and claimed hell as his domain. Fighting him wasn't just suicide, it was cosmic irrelevance. Lucifer's eyes swept across the assembled sinners, and each one felt personally judged. You come to my daughter's hotel, seeking a bounty placed by overlords who fear change. You attack a human who landed here through no choice of his own, who has broken no law except that of maintaining your comfortable misery. He turned to face Garou, and even the hero hunter felt the weight of that ancient gaze. You, living human, monster who rejected both heroism and evil, do you know why you're really here? Garou met his eyes, refusing to look away despite every instinct screaming danger. I was told fate made a mistake. Fate doesn't make mistakes. Lucifer's smile was sad, knowing. Reality tore open because you touched something you weren't supposed to touch, absolute evil powered by divine energy. When God tried to erase you and failed, when Saitama broke your transformation and you survived, you became an anomaly, a living paradox that reality didn't know how to process. He gestured broadly, so reality did what it always does with paradoxes. It sent you somewhere paradoxes belong, hell, a realm built on contradiction, where the damned seek redemption they're not supposed to deserve, where my daughter tries to rehabilitate sinners in a system designed for punishment, where nothing makes sense and everything matters. The army listened, confusion replacing bloodlust. This wasn't what they'd expected. The King of Hell explaining cosmic mechanics instead of simply obliterating the threat. But you've done something interesting, Lucifer continued, focusing on Garou. You've broken contracts, freed souls, rejected power when offered. These aren't the actions of a monster. They're not quite the actions of a hero either. They're the actions of someone who's still figuring out what they believe in. I don't believe in anything, Garou said flatly. Well, ire, Lucifer's accusation was gentle. You believe oppression is wrong, that the strong exploiting the weak is unacceptable. That choice matters even when it's uncomfortable. You've built your entire existence around those beliefs, first by becoming a monster to fight hero society, now by breaking hell's laws to protect sinners you barely know. He stepped closer, voice dropping to something almost conspiratorial. The question is, what will you believe when believing costs you everything? Before Garou could respond, the sky tore open, not metaphorically, literally. A wound in reality above hell's pride ring, bleeding golden light that burned like judgment itself. And descending through that wound came figures that made even Lucifer's expression darken. Angels, not the fallen exorcists who culled sinners yearly, but actual warriors of heaven. 6 of them, armored in light that hurt to look at directly, wielding weapons forged from divine absolutism. The lead angel's voice rang with absolute certainty. Lucifer Morningstar, the human anomaly you shelter has been designated a universal threat. By heaven's decree, he must be eliminated or returned to divine custody for proper judgment. Lucifer's wings spread wider, blocking the angel's view of Garou. Interesting, heaven ignored him when he fought on earth, ignored him when he nearly destroyed his world. But the moment he shows up in hell and starts actually helping people, suddenly he's a threat requiring divine intervention. His actions destabilize the cosmic order, the angel replied, breaking hell contracts, rejecting earned damnation, teaching sinners that change is possible. These actions threaten the fundamental separation between heaven and hell. Because God forbid literally that hell might actually rehabilitate anyone, Lucifer said, voice dripping with ancient bitterness. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Charlie's Hotel threatens heaven's entire justification for damnation. If sinners can be redeemed without heaven's permission, what's the point of your eternal judgment? The angels' formation tightened, weapons raising. This is not a debate. Surrender the anomaly or be complicit in his universal threat designation. Lucifer laughed, sharp, dangerous, infinitely amused. Complicit, I'm the devil. Being complicit in threats to cosmic order is literally my job description. Power gathered around him, reality bending under the weight of what he'd been before the fall. The angels responded, divine energy meeting infernal might in a standoff that made the air itself scream. And caught between them, Garou realized something profound. He'd spent his life fighting hero society's hypocrisy, only to discover that the cosmic order itself was built on the same lie. Heaven and hell maintaining their power structures by denying the possibility of change, of growth, of redemption. "Stop," he said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him, angels, devils, sinners, hotel residents. He stepped forward, past Lucifer's protective wing shadow, into the space between divine and infernal. "I'm not worth this," Garou continued. "I'm not worth a war between heaven and hell. I'm just someone who got lost because I couldn't figure out how to be human without being weak." "Garou," Charlie started, but he cut her off. "No, they're right. I'm a threat, not because I'm strong, but because I don't fit anywhere. I rejected heroes, rejected monsters, rejected God himself, and now I'm here causing problems for people who actually are trying to change." He looked at the angels. "If me leaving stops this, I'll go." The hotel's defenders reacted immediately. Charlie moved to protest, Vaggie raised her spear, angel dust aimed weapons at the angels, and even Alastair's smile faded into something more serious. But it was Lucifer who spoke. "No." The word carried absolute finality. "No," the lead angel's confusion was palpable. "No," Lucifer repeated. "This human came to hell through cosmic accident. He's done nothing but try to understand himself while accidentally disrupting power structures that deserve disruption. And you know what? I like that. I like that my daughter has someone who will fight for her hotel not because it benefits him, but because he believes in the idea of choice." His smile was sharp. "So he stays, and if heaven has a problem with that, send Michael. I haven't fought my brother in millennia. It'll be fun." The angels hesitated. Fighting Lucifer was one thing. Fighting him while he was defending something he actually cared about was another. Their orders had been clear, but orders didn't account for the devil's genuine investment. "This isn't over," the lead angel finally said. "The anomaly will be judged. If not by us, then by forces even you cannot oppose." They retreated through the wound in reality, which sealed behind them with a sound like divine disappointment. The army of bounty-seeking sinners had long since fled, sensing that being caught between Hell's king and heaven's warriors was above their pay grade. As silence fell over the battlefield, Lucifer turned to Garou with an expression that mixed amusement and something like respect. "You tried to sacrifice yourself to stop a war. Very heroic. Your younger self would be disgusted." "I'm already disgusted," Garou muttered. "Good," Lucifer's smile softened. "Disgust at your own heroism means you're taking it seriously instead of performing it. That's the difference between real virtue and the fake hero bullshit you spent your life fighting." He looked at his daughter, pride evident despite his exhaustion. "Charlie, your hotel has officially become a cosmic incident. Heaven's involved now. That means things are going to get significantly more complicated." "When have they not been complicated?" Charlie replied, moving to check on her residence. As everyone returned to the hotel to assess damage and process what had happened, Garou found himself standing alone in the crater Lucifer had created. The devil approached, studying him with ancient eyes. "You asked me once if you were here because of a mistake," Lucifer said quietly. "Want the truth? You're here because you're exactly what hell needs. Someone who refuses to accept that damnation is permanent, that power structures are immutable, that the strong should prey on the weak. You're a virus, Garou, a beautiful, destructive virus that infects certainty with doubt." "I don't want to be a virus," Garou said. "I don't want to be anything but myself." "Then be yourself," Lucifer replied simply, "and accept that yourself might be more heroic than you're comfortable admitting." As the king of hell vanished in flames, Garou was left with a question that had no answer. If he'd spent his life becoming a monster to fight false heroes, what did it mean when the devil himself called him heroic? The hunt for identity continued, but now heaven was watching. The week following Lucifer's intervention brought uneasy peace. The overlords, cowed by their king's direct involvement, pulled back from open conflict. The bounty remained, but few sinners were willing to test the devil's protection. The hotel existed in a bubble of tense safety, knowing it was temporary. Charlie used the time to expand her redemption programs, seeing Garou's presence as proof that change was possible. Vaggie trained harder, preparing for inevitable conflict. Husk drank and observed. Angel Dust processed his newfound freedom with Garou's awkward but sincere support, and Alistair watched everything with calculating amusement. But Garou couldn't shake the feeling of waiting for something inevitable. It came on the 8th day, not as violence but as philosophy. A new arrival at the hotel, not a sinner, not a demon, but something else. She appeared in the lobby without using doors, a woman with gray skin and eyes that held infinite sadness. She introduced herself as a Reaper, one of the entities responsible for guiding souls between realms. "I'm not here to fight," she said immediately, sensing the defender's tension. "I'm here to ask a question." Charlie approached cautiously. "What question?" The Reaper looked directly at Garou. "Why are you trying to redeem yourself?" "I'm not," Garou replied automatically. "Then why stay?" The Reaper's gaze was uncomfortably penetrating. "You've rejected power, rejected belonging to Hell's hierarchy. You could leave, find a way back to Earth, or simply exist in the spaces between realms. Why remain in a place that's trying to change you into something you claim not to want to be?" The question hung in the air, and Garou realized he didn't have an answer, at least not one he was ready to admit. "He stays because he's part of this hotel now," Charlie said firmly, "because everyone deserves support while they figure themselves out." "Does he?" The Reaper's challenge was gentle but unyielding. "Look at him, really look. He's powerful enough to break Hell's fundamental laws, strong enough to fight Heaven's angels. He doesn't need redemption, he needs purpose. And this hotel is just delaying his acceptance of what he really is." "Which is?" Vaggie demanded, spear manifested. "A predator," the Reaper said it without judgment, "a being defined by the hunt. He hunted heroes on Earth. He hunts oppression here. But hunting isn't redemption, it's just redirected violence. The question is whether that violence serves growth or just maintains the cycle under a different name." Garou felt the words cut deep because they articulated something he'd been avoiding. His fight against Valentino, his breaking of Angel's contract, his rejection of overlord power, were these redemptive acts or just new targets for the same hunt that had defined his existence? "Violence can serve growth," he said slowly, working through the thought. Breaking Angel's contract was violent, fighting the overlords was violent, but it achieved something that peace couldn't: freedom for someone who'd forgotten. What freedom felt like. "At what cost?" the Reaper pressed. "Your actions have destabilized Hell. Sinners now question their contracts. Overlords feel threatened. Heaven is watching. You've created chaos in service of one individual's freedom. Is that redemption, or is that you forcing your philosophy onto a realm that didn't ask for it?" "Hell's philosophy is oppression," Garou shot back. "If changing that creates chaos, then chaos is an improvement." "Says who?" The Reaper's question was simple but devastating. "You, an outsider who's been here less than 2 weeks. You decided Hell's entire system is wrong and appointed yourself the one to fix it. How is that different from the heroes you hated, deciding what's best for everyone else based on your personal morality?" The parallel hit like a physical blow. Garou had hunted heroes for exactly that, for deciding they knew what was best, for imposing their will on society through superior strength. And here he was, doing the same thing in Hell. "It's different," he said, but the conviction in his voice wavered. "Is it?" the Reaper pressed. "Or are you just another strong individual using power to force change without consensus? The heroes you hated probably thought they were doing good too." Charlie stepped between them, her voice carrying an edge Garou had rarely heard. "Okay, I've heard enough. You come to my hotel questioning whether helping people is actually help, whether fighting oppression is just another form of oppression. That's the kind of moral relativism that keeps suffering in place." "I'm not advocating for suffering," the Reaper replied calmly. "I'm asking whether individual liberation achieved through violent disruption is redemption, or if it's just rebellion wearing redemption's mask." "Why does it matter?" Angel Dust spoke up, surprising everyone. "Like seriously, why does the reason matter if the result is I'm free? If Garou broke my contract because he likes violence or because he's secretly a saint, I'm still free. The philosophy doesn't change the outcome. Doesn't it? The Reaper turned to him. If his motivation is just redirected hunting instinct, what happens when there's nothing left to hunt? When Hell's contracts are broken and overlords are defeated and oppression is dismantled? Will he find new targets, or will he face the emptiness that drove him to hunt in the first place? The question silenced the room because everyone recognized its truth. Garou had defined himself through opposition, to heroes, to societal systems, to tyranny. Remove those targets and what remained? Maybe that's what redemption actually is, Husk said from behind the bar, voice rough from drinking. Not becoming something new, but facing the emptiness you've been running from. Garou hunts because hunting gives him purpose. Take away the hunt, and he has to confront whatever made him need purpose through violence in the first place. Garou felt exposed, every defense mechanism activated. I'm not running from anything. You're running from humanity, the Reaper said gently. You became a monster because being human meant being vulnerable, being weak, being the victim of hero society's failures. But you can't hunt your way back to humanity. You can only accept it was always there beneath the monster disguise. This is pointless, Garou said, turning toward the stairs. Philosophy doesn't change reality. I'm here, I'm helping where I can, and I don't need cosmic validation for it. You're right, the Reaper agreed. You don't need validation, but you need to understand that redemption isn't a destination. It's a process of continual choice. And choosing to help isn't the same as being redeemed, it's just the beginning. As she faded from visibility, returning to whatever realm Reapers occupied, her final words lingered. The real test comes when helping people requires you to be vulnerable instead of strong. When redemption demands you become the thing you spent your life despising, someone who needs help themselves. The hotel fell into heavy silence. Charlie tried to restart normal activities, but the Reaper's questions had infected everyone's thoughts. That night, Garou stood at his window again, a habit he'd developed. The pride ring sprawled beneath him, sinners acting out their eternal patterns, and he realized the Reaper was right about one thing: he was still hunting, just hunting different targets. A knock interrupted his thoughts. He opened the door to find Charlie, looking exhausted but determined. "Can we talk?" she asked. Garou nodded, stepping aside to let her in. She sat on the bed he barely used, gathering her thoughts. "That Reaper asked important questions," Charlie began, "about whether we're actually helping people or just imposing our beliefs. And I've been thinking, maybe she's right. Maybe I've been so focused on proving redemption is possible that I haven't asked if sinners actually want it." "Why are you telling me this, Garou?" "Scared." "Because you're the same," Charlie said simply. "You fight oppression because you believe it's wrong, but have you asked the sinners here if they want their contracts broken, if they want Hell's system disrupted, or are you assuming you know what's best for them?" The parallel to his hunt against heroes was uncomfortable. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," Charlie said carefully, "that maybe true redemption, true change comes from offering choice, not forcing it, even if we think our way is better." She looked at him directly. "Tomorrow, Heaven's annual extermination begins. Angels descend to cull Hell's population permanently. It's horrific, systematic genocide that happens every year." And Garou's predator instincts were already activating. "And I want to stop it," Charlie admitted, "but I want to do it right, not by fighting the angels, that just reinforces the heaven versus hell conflict, but by proving sinners can be redeemed, that culling isn't necessary, except," she trailed off. "Except that requires sinners to want redemption," Garou finished. "And if they don't, you're just another authority figure deciding what's best for them." "Exactly," Charlie's expression was torn. "So I'm asking you, when the extermination starts and angels are killing sinners permanently, do we fight to protect them even if they don't want protection? Or do we respect their choice even if that choice is accepting damnation?" Garou had no answer. It was the same question he'd been avoiding since arriving. When did protection become tyranny? When did fighting for others become forcing your will on them? "I don't know," he admitted. "I've spent my life fighting things I thought were wrong, but maybe I've never asked if the people I was supposedly protecting actually wanted my help." Charlie nodded slowly. "Then we figure it out together, because tomorrow philosophy becomes action, and we need to know what we actually believe before angels start killing." As she left, Garou was struck by the irony. The monster who'd rejected heroes was now trying to figure out how to help people without becoming the very thing he'd hunted. Tomorrow would bring war, but the real battle was already raging, the war between who he'd been and who he was trying to become. The extermination began at midnight, Hell's time, when the boundary between realms was thinnest and heaven's judgment could manifest most efficiently. The sky tore open in 1,000 places simultaneously. Golden light poured through, burning against hell's perpetual crimson, and descending through those wounds came angels unlike any Garou had seen before. These weren't warriors or reapers. These were exorcists, angels bred and trained for one purpose: permanent death. They wore masks of pure white, faces hidden behind smiling expressions that somehow made them more terrifying. Their weapons were crafted from holy light, each one capable of erasing a sinner's soul permanently. No respawn, no second chance, just absolute ending. The hotel residents gathered on the roof, watching the horror unfold across hell's districts. Sinners fled screaming as exorcists descended like locusts, killing with mechanical efficiency. Some sinners fought back, but holy weapons negated demonic power. Resistance was futile. "Every year," Charlie whispered, voice breaking, "every year I watch this happen and can't stop it. Angels killing sinners who have already been punished for eternity, just to manage population numbers. It's genocide with heavenly approval." Garou watched exorcists cut down sinners who were begging, fleeing, trying to hide. And he saw the same thing he'd seen in hero society, the strong deciding who deserved to live based on systemic convenience rather than individual worth. "We could fight them," Vaggie said, fingers tight on her spear. She was a former exorcist herself, one who defected after seeing the cruelty of annual culls. "We have power, we could save some of them." "And then what?" Alistair asked, appearing beside them with that maddening smile. "You save a few hundred, a few thousand, but heaven sends more angels next year, and the year after. Fighting the symptoms doesn't cure the disease." "So we do nothing," Angel Dust's multiple hands clenched. "We just watch them die." "No," Charlie said, resolution hardening her voice. "We do what we always planned. We prove redemption is possible. We show heaven that sinners can change, that extermination isn't necessary." "How?" Garou asked, the tactical part of his mind already running scenarios. "You said yourself sinners have to want redemption. Most of them don't. They're comfortable in their damnation." "Then we find the ones who do," Charlie replied. "We save who we can save, not by fighting angels, but by demonstrating that change is real." An explosion interrupted the conversation. Several blocks away, a group of sinners had barricaded themselves in a building, trying to hide from the extermination. Exorcists suit. Surrounded it, preparing to breach and execute everyone inside. Garou's predator instincts activated. Those sinners, they're hiding, not fighting, they want to live. "Then let's give them that chance," Charlie said, already moving toward the stairs. They mobilized quickly, the full hotel crew plus Garou, moving through hell's streets toward the barricaded building. Exorcists noticed them immediately, weapons raising. "Princess Charlie," the lead exorcist said, voice distorted through their mask, "you cannot interfere with heaven's judgment. These sinners are designated for culling." "On what basis?" Charlie demanded, her demonic nature showing through genuine anger. "What did they do that deserves permanent death after already suffering in hell?" "They exist," the exorcist replied simply. "Their continued existence threatens the cosmic balance. That is sufficient cause." Garou stepped forward and every exorcist focused on him. "I know that logic. I've heard it before from heroes justifying violence against monsters. They're dangerous by nature, so eliminating them preemptively is justified. It's the same cowardice dressed as righteousness." "You're the anomaly," another exorcist observed. "The living human who breaks hell's laws. Perhaps your permanent ending should be prioritized." They attacked without further warning. Holy weapons carved through the air with lethal precision. Garou moved to intercept, applying every technique he'd mastered, but holy light burned in ways physical attacks didn't. These weapons were designed to kill permanently, even him. But he'd fought gods before. Angels were just soldiers following orders. Water stream rock smashing fist adapted, evolved. He couldn't touch the weapons directly, but he could redirect the angels' momentum, use their own force against them, create openings that let him strike without being struck. The exorcists were skilled, but they'd spent centuries fighting sinners who feared permanent death. Garou had never feared death, permanent or otherwise. It made him unpredictable, aggressive in ways they couldn't counter. Charlie and Vaggie engaged other exorcists, fighting to protect the barricaded building. Angel Dust provided covering fire. Husk used his wings and claws with brutal efficiency. Even Nifty darted between combatants, her small size and manic energy making her nearly impossible to hit. But more exorcists kept coming. The building they were protecting held maybe 40 sinners. Across hell, thousands were being killed. This wasn't a battle they could win through violence. "Charlie," Garou shouted, deflecting another holy blade. "We need a different strategy." I know, she was glowing with demonic power, holding off 3 exorcists simultaneously, but I don't. Reality rippled, the air grew heavy with presence, and manifesting between the hotel crew and the exorcists was a figure that made everyone pause. Emily, a seraphim, one of heaven's highest-ranking angels, responsible for divine judgment and mercy. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at directly, radiating compassion and absolute conviction in equal measure. "Enough," she said, and the exorcists immediately stood down. Emily looked at Charlie with something like sadness. "Princess, you know the extermination is necessary. Hell's population grows unchecked, without periodic culling." "Without periodic genocide, you mean," Charlie interrupted. "You're killing souls who have already been judged and punished. What happened to mercy, to forgiveness?" "They were judged," Emily replied gently. "Found wanting, sent to hell for eternal punishment. The extermination is just maintenance." "Maintenance," Garou's voice carried cold fury. "You're killing beings capable of thought, feeling, and change, and calling it maintenance. I've heard that logic before. It's what monsters use to justify hunting humans, what tyrants use to justify oppression." Emily turned to him, and her gaze held infinite sorrow. "You're the one who became a monster to fight heroes, who hunted those who protected people because you deemed them false. Tell me, is your judgment of heaven's system any different from the hero's judgment of monsters?" The parallel was deliberate, cutting, and Garou had no immediate answer because she was right. He was judging heaven's system from his perspective, just as heroes had judged monsters from theirs. "The difference," Garou said slowly, "is that I'm not killing anyone for my judgment. I'm just refusing to accept it as inevitable." "And if your refusal causes cosmic imbalance," Emily pressed, "if breaking hell's contracts and teaching sinners they can change disrupts the careful order that keeps heaven and hell from open war, then maybe that order deserves disruption," Charlie said firmly. "Maybe the cosmic balance you're so worried about is just another power structure that benefits those in charge while crushing everyone else." Emily was quiet for a long moment, studying both of TH. You know I can't allow you to interfere with the extermination. It's divine law," but she hesitated, and that hesitation revealed cracks in her absolute conviction. "But I'll make you an offer. Prove to me, to heaven, that sinners can truly be redeemed. Show us that one soul, just one, can earn their way back to heaven through genuine change. Do that, and I'll advocate for ending the exterminations." "One soul," Charlie repeated, "in exchange for stopping genocide." "It's more than anyone else in heaven is offering," Emily said sadly. "Most of my peers believe sinners are irredeemable by nature. Prove them wrong, and everything changes." She looked at the barricaded building, at the terrified sinners hiding inside. "Choose one from here, anyone. Bring them to the hotel, guide them through redemption, and present them to heaven for judgment. If they've genuinely changed, if they demonstrate virtue that wasn't present in their mortal life, the exterminations end." "And if we fail?" Vaggie asked suspiciously. "Then the exterminations continue," Emily replied, "and heaven's position is validated, that sinners cannot change, that hell is eternal, that the cosmic order must be maintained through culling." It was a trap disguised as an opportunity. Garou recognized it immediately. Heaven was betting that redemption was impossible, that this challenge would fail and justify their genocide, but refusing meant accepting the annual culls as inevitable. "We accept," Charlie said without hesitation. Emily nodded slowly. "You have until the next extermination, 1 year. Choose your candidate wisely." She began to fade, pulling the exorcists with her. "And Garou, heaven is watching you now. not as an anomaly to be eliminated, but as a variable we don't understand. Try not to destabilize reality further. As the angels vanished and the extermination slowly ended across hell, the hotel crew approached the barricaded building. The sinners inside emerged cautiously, shocked to be alive. "We're offering sanctuary," Charlie announced, "at the Hazbin Hotel, a place for redemption and second chances. Who wants to try?" Most of the sinners fled immediately, too afraid or cynical to believe in redemption. But one remained, a young woman demonically transformed but retaining human features. She looked at Charlie, then at Garou, with eyes that held desperate hope. "I want to try," she said quietly. "I've been in hell for 30 years. If there's any chance of getting out, of being better, I'll take it." Her name was Sarah. She died in a car accident while drunk driving, killed herself and 2 others. Hell had transformed her regret into eternal suffering, and now she represented the single chance to end heaven's genocide. As they walked back to the hotel, dawn breaking across hell's sky, Garou felt the weight of cosmic stakes settling on his shoulders. They had 1 year to redeem a soul, 1 year to prove that change was possible, 1 year to justify their entire philosophy. "No pressure, right?" Angel Dust muttered. But Garou was thinking about the Reaper's question, Emily's challenge, and his own journey. He'd spent his life hunting heroes because they were false. Now he had to prove something was genuinely true, that people could change, that redemption wasn't a comfortable lie, that the hunt for humanity was worth the cost. The irony wasn't lost on him. The monster who'd rejected heroism was now responsible for proving heroism's fundamental premise, that people could be better than their worst moments. The hunt had evolved. Now he was hunting proof that he himself could change. The year that followed Heaven's challenge was the hardest of Garou's existence, and that included fighting gods. Sarah's redemption became the hotel's singular focus. Charlie developed comprehensive programs, Vaggie created structure, Husk offered surprisingly insightful cynicism, Angel Dust provided empathy from someone who understood being trapped by past mistakes, and Garou didn't know what he provided. He wasn't a therapist or counselor. He couldn't offer wisdom about overcoming guilt. His entire life had been defined by refusing to feel guilty for the violence he'd inflicted. But Charlie insisted he participate. "You're part of the hotel now, and Sarah needs to see that change is possible from someone who's actually changing." So Garou attended therapy sessions, listened to Sarah process decades of guilt over the lives she'd taken, and tried to figure out how to help when he barely understood his own journey. The work was brutal. Sarah had bad days when she'd break down, convinced she deserved hell's punishment. Days when the weight of her actions crushed any hope of being better. Days when she'd lash out, angry at herself and everyone trying to help. Garou recognized those days. He'd lived variations of them his entire life. 3 months in, during one of Sarah's worst breakdowns, Garou found himself sitting across from her in the hotel's therapy room alone, because she'd driven everyone else away with screaming accusations of false hope. "I killed people," she said, voice raw. "2 innocent people who didn't deserve to die because I was selfish and stupid. And you want me to believe I can be redeemed, that I can earn my way to heaven after that?" Garou was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I hunted heroes, good people who saved lives. I nearly destroyed my world trying to become absolute evil. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out if I can be something other than a monster." He met her eyes. "I don't know if you can be redeemed. I don't know if I can, but maybe that's not the point." "Then what is the point?" Sarah demanded. "Choosing to try," Garou said slowly, working through the thought as he spoke. "I became a monster because I thought being human meant being weak, being a victim. I rejected heroism because heroes were false, but I never asked if there was something between those extremes, being human, flawed, trying anyway." "You're saying I should try even though I might fail." "I'm saying trying despite the possibility of failure is what makes it real," Garou replied. "Heroes I hunted did good things to look impressive. They succeeded because they were strong, but real growth comes from trying when failure is likely, from choosing to be better even when being worse is easier." Sarah was quiet, processing. "You really believe that?" "I'm starting to," Garou admitted. "Or at least I'm trying to believe it, which might be the same thing." The moment passed, but something shifted. Sarah didn't give up, and Garou realized he'd done something he'd never done before, offered genuine support without undermining it with cynicism or pushing someone towards strength through conflict. He was learning empathy, and it was terrifying. 6 months in, Sarah had made visible progress. She participated in hotel activities, helped new residents, processed her guilt through constructive channels, but heaven's judgment loomed and everyone felt the pressure. Alistair watched the entire process with his eternal smile, occasionally offering observations that were either profound or deliberately unhelpful, sometimes both. "You know what's fascinating," he said one evening, finding Garou on the roof. "You're redeeming yourself by helping her redeem herself. Recursive redemption. It's like watching someone pull themselves up by their own bootstraps through sheer philosophical determination." "Is there a point to this?" Garou asked, too tired for the radio demon's games. "Just noting the irony," Alistair replied cheerfully. "The monster who hunted heroes, becoming heroic through the least heroic method possible, genuine care without recognition or reward. If this were a story, it would be too on the nose for my taste." "Then stop watching," Garou suggested. "And miss the conclusion, never," Alistair's eyes gleamed. "I'm betting you succeed, by the way, not because redemption is real, but because you're too stubborn to admit when something is impossible. It's your most endearing quality." 9 months in, heaven sent Emily to evaluate Sarah's progress. The seraphim arrived without fanfare, manifesting in the hotel lobby and requesting to speak with their redemption candidate. The interview lasted hours. Sarah answered every question honestly, about her crimes, her time in hell, her journey toward genuine change. She didn't make excuses or minimize what she'd done. She simply demonstrated that she'd become someone different from the person who'd made those fatal choices. Emily's expression throughout remained neutral, impossible to read. When the interview concluded, she stood before the assembled hotel residents. "Sarah has shown remarkable progress, genuine remorse, authentic desire to be better, but..." She paused, and the pause felt like judgment itself. "But I cannot determine if she's truly redeemed or simply performing redemption. The distinction matters." "How can we prove the difference?" Charlie asked desperately. "You can't," Emily replied. "That's the fundamental challenge. Actions can be faked, words can be lies. The only way to know if someone has truly changed is to test them in circumstances where performing virtue is harder than embracing vice." She looked directly at Garou. "Which is why you'll be the test." Garou's confusion was genuine. "You've broken hell's laws, destabilized power structures, become a threat to cosmic order." Emily's voice was gentle but unyielding. "Heaven has authorized your elimination, not as punishment but as cosmic correction. The human anomaly will be erased and reality will stabilize." The hotel erupted in protests, but Emily continued. "However, if Sarah chooses to sacrifice her redemption, to remain in hell permanently, to save you, that will prove her change is genuine, that she's capable of selfless action without expectation of reward." The trap was perfect. Sarah could achieve redemption by letting Garou die, PR. Owing she'd grown past her selfish choices. Or she could choose to save him, sacrificing her own redemption but demonstrating virtue beyond self-interest. "That's insane," Vaggie snarled. "You're forcing her to choose between her freedom and someone else's life." "I'm giving her the same choice she failed in life," Emily replied sadly. "She drove drunk, prioritizing her convenience over others' safety. Now she can choose differently, or reveal that her redemption was just sophisticated self-interest." Sarah stood frozen, the weight of the choice crushing her. Garou saw it in her eyes, the calculation, the fear, the desperate want to finally escape hell after decades of suffering. He also saw the moment she made her decision. "I choose him," Sarah said quietly. "I choose to save Garou, even if it means I stay here forever." Emily smiled, the first genuine expression Garou had seen on the angel's face. "Why?" "Because redemption isn't about earning heaven," Sarah replied. "It's about being someone who'd make different choices than the person I was. The person who killed those people would have chosen her own freedom. I'm choosing to be different." The hotel held its breath. Emily approached Sarah, studying her with eyes that saw deeper than flesh and bone. "You understand what this means. You'll remain in hell, no redemption, no escape, just the choice to be better without reward." "I understand," Sarah said, "and I still choose it." Light gathered around Emily, building to unbearable intensity. When it faded, Sarah stood transformed, not to human, that would have meant redemption, to heaven, but changed somehow. Her demonic features softened, her eyes clear of the corruption that marked hell's permanent residence. "You passed," Emily said simply, "not by earning heaven, but by proving you'd choose virtue without it. That's the only redemption that matters, the kind you'd maintain even when no one's watching, even when it costs you everything." She turned to the assembled hotel residents. "Heaven will end the exterminations. Sarah has proven that sinners can change genuinely. The cosmic order does not require culling to maintain balance, it requires opportunity for growth." "Wait," Charlie said, hope and confusion mixing. "That's it, we won." "You won," Emily confirmed, though perhaps not the way you expected. Sarah doesn't get heaven, but she gets to be someone who would deserve it, which is its own form of grace. She looked at Garou. "And you, the anomaly who destabilized hell by refusing to accept damnation as permanent, you've accidentally proven that change is possible even in realms designed for eternal punishment." As Emily faded, returning to heaven with proof that redemption was real, the hotel erupted in celebration. Sarah stood at the center, crying, surrounded by people who'd helped her become someone new. But Garou stepped outside, needing air, needing space to process what had happened. Charlie found him on the roof, looking out over hell's transformed landscape. Word of the extermination's end was spreading. Sinners who'd lived in terror of annual culling were realizing they had time, infinite time, to change. "You did it," Charlie said softly. "You helped save Sarah, stopped the genocide, and proved redemption is real." "She did it," Garou corrected. "I just existed around her." "You did more than exist." Charlie stood beside him, not touching but present. "You showed her that trying despite guaranteed failure is what makes change real. That vulnerability isn't weakness. That choosing to care is its own form of strength." Garou was quiet, watching sinners celebrate in streets that had known only fear. "I spent my life hunting heroes because they were false, but I never asked what true heroism looked like. I think," he paused, the admission difficult, "I think it looks like Sarah, choosing sacrifice without recognition, being better without reward." "And what do you look like?" Charlie asked. Garou considered the question. A year ago he would have said he was a monster, a hunter, someone defined by what he destroyed. But now, after helping Sarah, after fighting overlords and angels and his own nature, he had a different answer. "I look like someone trying," he said finally. "Not succeeding, not failing, just trying, and maybe that's enough." Charlie smiled, the expression carrying satisfaction that had nothing to do with proving redemption and everything to do with seeing someone accept themselves. "You know, the hotel could use a permanent resident, someone who's not trying to get to heaven, just trying to figure out who they are." "Is that your way of asking me to stay?" Garou asked. "It's my way of saying you already belong here," Charlie replied. "The anomaly who broke hell's laws, fought heaven's judgment, and accidentally became the kind of hero you spent your life claiming didn't exist, someone who protects without needing validation for it." Garou laughed, short, sharp, but genuine. "I'm not a her." "Lo." "No," Charlie agreed. "You're something better, you're yourself. Flawed, dangerous, caring despite every instinct telling you not to. That's worth more than any hero title." As they returned to the celebration, Garou felt something he hadn't felt since childhood, belonging without performance, acceptance without needing to be stronger or weaker, just being. The hunt was over, not because he'd caught his prey, but because he'd realized the prey was never heroes or monsters or cosmic systems. It was understanding of himself, of others, of the space between strength and weakness where humanity actually existed. Hell was still hell, overlords still ruled, sinners still suffered. But the Hazbin Hotel stood as proof that change was possible, that damnation wasn't destiny, that even monsters could choose different hunts. And Garou, the hero hunter who'd rejected heroism, had found something more valuable than validation or power or purpose. He'd found himself flawed, trying, human. It was enough. 5 years after heaven ended the exterminations, hell had transformed in subtle but significant ways. Garou stood on the hotel's roof, rebuilt twice, expanded 3 times, now housing over 200 sinners seeking redemption or just seeking understanding. The view had changed. Where overlord territories once maintained rigid boundaries, now there were neutral zones where contracts were questioned and renegotiated fairly. Not everywhere, not even most places. Hell was still hell, and many sinners preferred damnation's dark comfort to redemption's painful work. But enough had changed that heaven noticed, that the cosmic order had shifted, that the line between eternal punishment and possible growth had blurred in ways that terrified authorities and inspired those suffering beneath them. Sarah had become the hotel's head counselor, helping sinners navigate their own journeys. Angel Dust ran outreach programs for contract slaves seeking freedom. Husk managed the bar that had become a neutral meeting ground for sinners from every ring. Vaggie trained defenders who protected the hotel and its philosophy. And Charlie had become more than a princess with a dream. She'd become a symbol, proof that caring wasn't weakness, that fighting for others wasn't performance, that redemption was real if people were willing to do the work. Alistair still watched everything with that maddening smile, occasionally commenting on how entertaining they'd all become. Garou remained the anomaly, still human, still alive, still marked with cosmic patterns that pulsed gently, reminder of touching absolute power and choosing not to use it absolutely. He'd stopped hunting years ago, not because there weren't targets, overlords still exploited, systems still oppressed, injustice still existed, but because he'd learned that hunting was just addressing symptoms. Real change came from building alternatives, not destroying existing structures. The Hazbin Hotel was that alternative, imperfect, messy, frequently failing but trying, always trying. Lost in thought, Garou turned to see Lucifer, who visited occasionally to check on his daughter's progress. The devil looked tired but satisfied, as if watching hell slowly reform gave him hope for his own distant redemption. Reflecting, Garou replied, on how I ended up here. Cosmic mistake, Lucifer said with a slight smile. Reality didn't know where to put someone who touched absolute evil and survived, so it sent you somewhere paradoxes belong. Was it really a mistake, Garou asked, or did something want me here? Does it matter? Lucifer's eyes held ancient wisdom. You're here, you've changed hell more than any rebellion or war could. By refusing to accept that damnation was permanent, you've infected an entire realm with the possibility of hope. He chuckled. You're a virus, Garou, the most effective kind, one that spreads by proving alternatives are possible. I'm not trying to be inspirational, Garou said. That's why you are, Lucifer replied. Performance is obvious. Genuine change, change that costs something and expects nothing, that's what actually matters. He began to fade, returning to his duties as Hell's king, but his parting words lingered. You know heaven still watches you, wondering if you'll destabilize reality further or if you found equilibrium. My advice, keep them wondering. Certainty is the enemy of growth. As night fell, or what passed for night in hell, Garou returned to his room. It was no longer sparse. 5 years had accumulated books, mementos, evidence of life lived rather than endured. On his desk sat a letter from Earth. Saitama had somehow found a way to send it across dimensional barriers, the envelope marked with casual indifference to cosmic law. Garou opened it, reading the brief message. Hey, heard you ended up in hell, that sucks, but I also heard you're helping people there, which is pretty cool. Remember when you said heroes were frauds, I think. You figured out that being genuine is harder than being fake, but more worthwhile. Keep trying, that's all any of us can do. P.S. If you find a way back to Earth, let's fight again. For fun this time, not philosophy. Garou smiled, rare, genuine. The hero who'd broken him was casually supporting his journey in the most Saitama way possible, with simple acknowledgement and an invitation to keep growing. He folded the letter carefully, placing it with other reminders that change was real. A knock came at his door. Angel Dust entered without waiting for permission, carrying news about a new sinner who'd heard about the hotel and wanted help. Kids about 16, Angel explained, died in gang violence, scared, angry, doesn't trust anyone, reminds me of, he gestured at Garou. Well, you, when you first crashed into hell all pissed off and confused. Garou stood, following Angel toward the lobby where the new arrival waited. As they walked, he reflected on how far he'd come from the monster who'd hunted heroes through absolute conviction in his rightness. Now he helped sinners through messy acknowledgement that he didn't have answers, just willingness to try alongside them. The lobby was full as always, sinners processing trauma, working through guilt, learning that they could choose who to become despite who they'd been. Charlie greeted the new arrival with her impossible optimism, and Garou saw in the teenager's eyes the same defensive anger that had defined his own youth. The hunt for humanity continued, not by becoming stronger or hunting specific targets, but by choosing daily to be present, to care, to support growth without controlling it. In a universe where fate had made what seemed like a mistake, sending a living human to hell through cosmic accident, something extraordinary had emerged. Proof that redemption wasn't a destination but a process, that change was possible in realms designed for permanence, that even monsters could choose to be something more honest than monstrous or heroic. Garou had spent his life hunting heroes because they were false. In hell, he'd learned that truth wasn't found through hunting. It was found through the harder work of becoming someone who'd choose growth over comfort, vulnerability over strength, care over indifference. The teenage sinner looked at him suspiciously. "You're the one who's supposed to help me." Garou met his eyes, seeing himself reflected back. "I'm the one who will try, whether it helps is up to you." It was honest, imperfect, human. And in Hell's reformed landscape, in the Hazbin Hotel's growing community, in the space between damnation and redemption where real change actually happened, that honesty was enough. The monster who'd hunted heroes had become something neither monstrous nor heroic, just genuine, still dangerous, still marked by cosmic power, still capable of incredible violence. But choosing daily to be someone who'd protect rather than hunt, support rather than control, try rather than assume. In a universe where fate made a single mistake, that mistake had revealed a profound truth. The hunt for humanity wasn't about destroying false heroes or becoming absolute evil. It was about the patient, difficult work of being real in a world, an afterlife, that rewarded performance. And that work, that choice, that ongoing trial of trying despite guaranteed difficulty. That was the most heroic thing any monster could do. The story was complete, but the journey continued. Because redemption, real redemption, never truly ends. It just keeps choosing itself, one difficult day at a time.